Hello, welcome to PRIORAT Explained. We are here with Guillem Pastrana today in Clos in Gratallops, tasting an amazing wine, Clos 2008 vintage. And well, Guillem Pastrana is now here in Clos trying to continue this amazing project, Clos that is completely the 0 kilometer of modern Priorat, right? Estem al quilòmetre zero. 0 kilometer, the place where it all began again. So, the place where the so-called five magnificence started and made the Priorat what we know nowadays as Priorat. Hello, Guillem, welcome to PRIORAT Explained, and thank you to welcome us into Clos. It's been an amazing tour, actually an amazing wine tasting, and tell us something about you. What do you do here in Clos?
Yeah, so first of all, welcome to you too here to our winery. It's a pleasure to receive you and explain to you a little bit what we are doing. In my case, I'm the director of the company at this moment, and what I'm trying is to be the second generation of my family, that they were one of the pioneers that arrived here in Priorat in the 80s, and they decided to start a new adventure here, making these extraordinary wines that you can taste.
Yeah, sure. Amazing wines, actually. We've been tasting a little bit, to be honest, and it's been incredible. I have to say, amazing, breathtaking, we might say. So, your father started here with this so-called five magnificence. How did it all start? Why Priorat? Why this area? And how was this Priorat in late 80s?
Yeah, so probably this is a question that you have to ask to my father.
Of course, you're so young, of course.
But since I remember at that moment Priorat probably was more wild. You have to take account that at that moment just to come from Barcelona to here, it took something like 3 hours. So when they arrived here, everything was more difficult because before them nobody thought that you could make a high quality wine here in Priorat. So when they arrived here, just few wineries, in case of Gratallops, the cooperative and a small winery in the middle of the village, or in the center of the village, they were producing wine. So nobody before the pioneers believed that somebody could make a high standing or outstanding wine here in Priorat. So for this reason, in the case was quite difficult to make wine here and to decide or to choose a region like Priorat to start this adventure. Could be easier at that moment, for example, go to Rioja or even to Penedès, but they decided to arrive here. Why? Because it was a question of feelings. So they feel that it was the right option. So at that moment they decided to come here, take a little bit the know-how from friends, import some varieties like the Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot and Syrah, and then recover the old varieties like Grenache and Carignana, or typical varieties from Priorat like Grenache and Carignana, and try to make outstanding wines. And I think that at the end they got it, and it's the case of
Sure.
Clos.
Sure, they did it, they made it. It's amazing how this region in 20, 30, 35 years has changed so much. Actually, the difference is one of the difference that you are saying, and I think it's an important issue, is that when they got here, it was 3 hours away from Barcelona. Now it's a little bit closer. The distance is the same, but of course the roads have changed. The area has changed, and some people are living their villages, right? They can go out and see other places. So how do you think the Priorat has changed since the arrival of these five pioneers?
Yeah, so obviously the Priorat at that moment was more rural. So the people, or the farmers were making grapes in order to sell it, or making grapes in order to make wine and sell it, but they didn't think that they could make high-standing wines. So how it changed? So just you have to take account that when they arrived here, just there were 2 wineries. At this moment, just in Gratallops, I think that there are 33. So all the people is working in something that is related to the wine. So that is the most important thing. And the second is the potential of the area. At that time has a potential, at this time has another totally different potential. So we will see what happens in the future, but I'm sure that Priorat will become a very classy area, very well recognized around the world. So probably not probably, because it's what is happening. Now we are receiving people from around the world that want to invest here in Priorat. And this is very important, because 20 years before nobody wanted to invest here.
Sure.
So now there is, you can, in Gratallops, for example, that is the village where Clos is located, you can find people of a lot of different nationalities. You can find Portuguese people, you can find people from United States, people from Finland, people from Switzerland. All of these people is here because just they want to invest in wine. And this is the most important thing. Priorat will become something more special than it was. So I think that is a little bit the future of the Priorat, or the different, not the future, sorry, it's the different between before and now. Before was something to discover, and now is something to rediscover.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Actually, it's been amazing for me to see this. I think it's changing every year. So every year a little bit more people knows Priorat, right? But how do you see the Priorat with all this pandemic right now? The immediate future of Priorat, do you think it will change again? How do you think this will go?
Yeah, obviously the pandemic and the COVID will change the world. Obviously it will change Priorat. But in our case, we are a very small region, we are a very small area, so probably it affects a lot to all of the wineries. But I think we will survive. Why? Because we in Priorat is an area, is a zone, is a DOQ where we are making a very high standing wine. So we are based in the quality. So obviously it will affect to us, but at the end, when you make high quality wines, it's easier to you to sell it around the world, you know. So we will see what happens. Nobody knows. It's difficult, but I'm sure that we will survive the situation. Okay, because it is not the first. You say catastrophe? It's not the first catastrophe.
The calamity.
Yeah,
Sure.
the first calamity that happened to the Priorat area and other zones around Europe.
Sure.
So I think we will survive it. For me, it's not a problem, COVID. We will see what happens in the future. Obviously, a lot of wineries will suffer it, but you have to take account that this is a zone where we make high quality wines, and the quality always survives.
Okay, it's a nice point of view actually, because everybody's being very well.
We have to be optimists.
Sure.
Okay, we are winemakers, but
We must.
But you have to know when the pioneers arrived here, they were kind of hippies. So we are always optimists, okay? And that's the most important thing, okay? Because if you are not optimist, it's difficult to make wine, and more in these times, you know, with the COVID and with all of this situation. So, and at the end, if we don't survive, we have enough wine to drink for a lot of years.
That's a good way of putting it, yeah. So, what do you think that makes this region so special, and especially Gratallops, right? Because they chose Gratallops, your father, Guillem Pastrana, and René Barbier, and etc., etc. They decided to, establish this first cellar. We are now in this first winery, right? So it's a precious place to be. Why did they choose Gratallops? And nowadays, would you choose this same spot?
Yeah, well, as I told you before, maybe this is a question that you have to ask to my father, but from I know, they decided to come here because when they arrive at Priorat, they feel something magic. You know, they had a feeling that they have to stay here. So you have to know that first of all, the pioneers, or my father Carlos Pastrana and René, they decided to explore other zones like Penedès. But they said that they went there and they finally said, no, maybe this is not the area where we have to plant, so they decided to move here to Priorat. The first village where they arrived was here in Gratallops, and they feel something magic. So, as I always say, when you are a winemaker or when you are producing wine, if you want to produce high-standing wines, outstanding wines, you have to have a feeling with the lands or with the plots from where you take where you plant your vines. So for me, and I think for them at that moment, Gratallops is a place that is magic. The terroir, the location, you know, these hundreds of hills around the village where you can plant different varieties and you can pick the grapefruit exposition as well. Yeah. So for me, Gratallops is a place that is magic. Obviously, there are other villages in Priorat that are fantastic too, but if I have to choose, I choose Gratallops. Why? Because it's a question of feelings. The wine of Gratallops are very special, very different than the others. Obviously, there are other regions or other villages like Torroja. Torroja is fantastic too. Vilella Alta is fantastic too. The other villages of DOQ Priorat are fantastic too. But if I have to choose, I choose Gratallops because I love the wines that the winemakers are making here. Okay, so for me and for the kind of wines that we are making, Gratallops and Torroja are perfect places where to make it.
Okay, so I think that you talk a lot about magic, and I think it's incredible because actually you have to come to Gratallops to feel it, right? Because well, we've been to Gratallops several times, and first time you say, well, this is Gratallops, where's the magic? But you understand this magic when you come the second, the third, the fourth time. So you feel this something. Right? But nowadays, if we talk about climate, for example, Gratallops is known as quite a warm area of Priorat. Do you think that with the climate change arriving, with the global warming, do you think the wines will change? Would you choose the same village if you have to start the project right now?
Yeah, first of all, about climate change or world warming, I mean, I believe in it, but we will see what happens in the future.
Of course.
Okay, we don't know if it's going to get worse or not. Then it's true that this is affecting our wines. So if you taste a Clos de l'Obac 1989 and a Clos de l'Obac 2004, when the world warming started to affect us a lot, the wine is a little bit different. But as I always say, there are not good vintages, there are good winemakers. So as a winemaker, you have to understand and adapt yourself to what is happening. So at the end, now we can control it, okay? We harvest earlier, in case of Clos de l'Obac, for example. We do the pruning in a different time. We do the pre-pruning in a different time. We don't irrigate the grapes, but probably in the future we will need to do it. There is new technologies that will help us to fight against this world warming. So for me, at this moment, Gratallops continue to be a perfect place. We will see what happens in the future. Obviously, there are winemakers that they are trying to find highest positions where to plant the
freshest places.
Yeah, we have it. In our case, we own 140 hectares, and part of these hectares are at 500, 600 meters of altitude. At this moment, what we have is perfect for us for making Clos de l'Obac. We will see what happens in the future, but obviously climate change or world warming or global warming is something that all winemakers have to study. Good thing of Priorat is that it's a microclimate. We have these two mountains, Montsant Mountains and Lleveria Mountain, that create a kind of a wall that at the same time create a microclimate here in the area.
Sure.
So we will see what happens in the future. Now I cannot predict it.
Sure, it's difficult.
The only thing that I can say that I think we maintain the quality in our wines. That is the most important thing. If we ever, if in the future we cannot do it, maybe we have to think about change to another region. Maybe we have to think to travel to South America to make wine. But I think in the next 20 years we will continue making these extraordinary wines.
Sure you will, because as you said, you are focusing on the winemakers, which I think it's a great way to put it. And as well, I think that you see, as you said before, this is optimism, right? So this optimism is taking this global warming as a challenge more than something that will be very bad in these terms. Of course, it will be very bad in other terms, but in the terms of the winemaking, maybe it will be something different, and we will see what happens. Just changing the subject a little bit. We have seen that you choose to produce your wines, to make your wines with not so typical varieties, right? So maybe you, for example, in this Clos de l'Obac, we find the classic coupage of Priorat Plus, the Merlot, right? We can see as well, you use the Tempranillo in Miserere, and even Muscat and Xarel·lo for Kyrie, which are strange, not strange, but not so common varieties here. Why do you do it? I mean, what do you think leads you to make these wines with these varieties? What's different?
I mean, to understand it, we have to talk a little bit about the history of Clos de l'Obac. So in 1989, when my father decided to make this wine, we also decided to use a certain formula. It means that in case of Clos de l'Obac, we are using Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Syrah, Carignana and Garnache. So these two typical varieties from Priorat, Garnache and Carignana, and then three varieties, Merlot, Syrah and Cabernet Sauvignon, that we imported from France. So at that moment they decided to use this special formula, and every year we are using the same coupage. And every year the wine is a little bit different depending on the circumstances. So it means that you can taste Clos de l'Obac 1989 and at the same time a Clos de l'Obac 2010, and you taste these two different vintages, but there you will always feel that they have something in common.
Sure.
So this is important for us, okay, to always maintain these varieties. Also, then talking about why we are using it, because you have to take account something. We are making, I always say, we are making Clos de l'Obac, not Priorat. So our wines are different than the others, and I'm not saying that are better or worse, just I'm telling to you that we are using a totally different formula, a totally different way to make wine. And for this reason we are using, for example, varieties like Cabernet Sauvignon. Why Cabernet Sauvignon? Because give a very good longevity to it.
Sure.
Why Merlot? Why Tempranillo in case of Miserere?
Yes.
Because Tempranillo in this case gives a very special typicity. Typicity.
Yes.
Typicidad to the wine. So for this reason we are using these varieties, because we like to use it in the wine. I know that now is fashionable here in Priorat to just work with Garnache and Carignana. It's perfect, and there is a lot of winemakers that they are making great wines using just these two varieties. But in our case, as I was explaining before, we are making Clos de l'Obac, not just Priorat. Obviously, our grapes, our vines are planted in Priorat land, but at the same time, we are making a wine in the way that we like to make it. We are making Clos de l'Obac. That is something different for us.
For sure, the wines from Clos de l'Obac are signature wines, and there's no doubt about it. So I think that it's pretty interesting how this Priorat region, at the same time, it's a very small designation of origin, very small region, but at the same time it's very versatile, right? So you can plant red Grenache, you can plant Carignan, but still you can make great and amazing wines with Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Syrah, etc., etc. So I think it's a very interesting point of view. So signature wines, this Clos de l'Obac 2008 vintage, I think it's an outstanding wine, amazing. You can see how much wine is left in my glass, right? I can't resist, you know. But where can you find this wine? For the viewers that are watching this interview, where can they find this wine? And when it's the special occasion to open a bottle of Clos de l'Obac?
Okay, perfect. So, well, obviously they can find it in the internet. But and a lot of shops in Barcelona. Or if they want, they can come and visit the winery, and we will let they can buy some bottles.
I think it's the best choice, right? Because you have to come here to feel the magic of Gratallops, of Priorat, as you said before. So yeah.
Yeah. So they can come and they will find it here. So, and also talking about the good occasion of the wine, I always say that each wine has his occasion. In case of Clos de l'Obac, you can drink it whatever you want. We can drink it now here in the interview, or you can drink it in the Christmas time. The most important thing is that I'm sure that you will enjoy it.
Sure, I certainly did, and I am certainly doing it. And at the same time, with which special dish would you pair this wine?
Obviously, you can drink this. I would recommend as a red wine with some meat, but what match perfectly is with goat.
Okay.
With goat, it's fantastic.
Fantastic with goat.
Yeah. With goat, with some meat. But I'm not. I mean, I'm not a winemaker that is obsessionated about which wine. Yeah. With which dishes you have to match it. I mean, it's a very gastronomic wine, but at the same time, it's a wine
you can drink it by itself. Right?
Yeah. So I don't like to talk a lot. I always say I don't like to talk a lot about my wines. I prefer that my wines talk by themselves.
Yeah.
So open a bottle, drink it, and then after that.
They certainly talk all by themselves. I assure you. Last question. Just to resume, how do you see the Priorat in a few years? How do you see the future of Priorat?
Obviously, due to the circumstances, the only Priorat must apostar, ¿cómo es? Apostar en inglés?
Yeah,
must bet for the quality. So the future of Priorat is in the quality. So Priorat is a very small region. It's going to be difficult to compete with the biggest regions that they can produce cheapest wines. So for me, the future of Priorat is quality, but not just quality. We have to try to find the excellence. So just that we have to try to continue making outstanding wines that would be recognized for the best tasters and the best consumers around the world. So quality, quality, and quality. For me, it's the only way that Priorat will survive and will become a really recognized region. Now it is, but we will see what happens in the future. So if we want to continue following this line, if we want to continue being an important region in the wine world, we need to make quality, quality, quality.
That's a nice way of saying it, because nowadays I think that the most shocking thing about Clos de l'Obac is that you see how the world is spinning and how it becomes everything. Every day it's faster and faster and faster, and you come here, you come to Gratallops, and you especially come to Clos de l'Obac, and you see these very long-living wines and slow motion wines. I don't know how to put it, but yeah, and this is what I love about these signature wines, for sure, signature wines. Thank you so much, Guillem, for receiving us. It's been a pleasure to be here, to taste these wines, to talk with you, and for sure you can find Clos de l'Obac at some places, but we really recommend you to come here, visit this special place, and feel the magic of Gratallops and Priorat, and especially Clos de l'Obac. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much, Guillem. See you next time, and see you again next time.